When the bank seized 78-year-old Walter Hayes' ranch, everyone in town thought it was over. The foreclosure papers were signed. The gates were locked. The cattle were sold. And within a week, a wealthy development company announced plans to build a luxury housing community on the land. Walter quietly packed his belongings and prepared to leave. But what nobody knew, not the bank, not the developers, not even the town mayor, was that Walter still owned something far more valuable than the ranch itself. The water beneath it. And one forgotten document hidden in an old metal box was about to cost the developers millions. Walter Hayes had spent nearly 60 years working his ranch outside the small town of Red Creek, Texas. His father had bought the property in 1954. Back then, it wasn't much. Just dry grassland, a weather-beaten barn, and a few hundred acres nobody wanted. But Walter loved every inch of it. He married there. Raised his children there. Buried his wife there beneath a large oak tree overlooking the creek. To Walter, the ranch wasn't property. It was family. Unfortunately, family doesn't pay medical bills. After his wife Margaret passed away, Walter's health began to decline. A series of hospital visits left him buried in debt. Then came 2 years of drought. Cattle prices fell. Expenses rose. And eventually, Walter fell behind on his loan payments. The local bank gave him extensions. Then warnings. Then final notices. Finally, after months of negotiations, the foreclosure became official. The ranch was gone. The news spread through town quickly. Most people felt sorry for Walter. But business is business. At least that's what the bank manager kept saying. 3 days later, a company called Silver Ridge Development purchased the ranch from the bank. Their plan was ambitious. More than 200 luxury homes. A golf course. A shopping center. And private lakes for residents. The project was expected to generate millions. Construction crews arrived almost immediately. Surveyors began marking property lines. Bulldozers prepared access roads. Everything seemed perfect. Until the engineers discovered a problem. A very expensive problem. The development required massive amounts of water. Far more than the town's existing supply could provide. Fortunately, according to preliminary reports, a large underground aquifer sat directly beneath the ranch. The developers celebrated. Access to water would make the project incredibly profitable. They filed paperwork to begin extraction. Then the state's Water Commission rejected the request. At first, everyone assumed it was a paperwork mistake. It wasn't. According to official records, Silver Ridge owned the land. But they did not own the water rights. Someone else did. And that someone was Walter Hayes. The executives were stunned. How could a man who no longer owned the ranch still control the water beneath it? The answer went back nearly 70 years. When Walter's father purchased the ranch, he received separate mineral and water rights as part of a special agreement with the previous owner. Years later, when the ranch was used as collateral for loans, every document referenced the land itself. But the water rights had never been attached to the mortgage. They remained a separate asset. An asset nobody bothered to investigate. Not the bank. Not the lawyers. Not the developers. Walter still owned them. Legally. Completely. And without those rights, the luxury community couldn't move forward. The developers contacted Walter immediately. Their first offer was generous. $500,000. Walter politely declined. The executives increased the offer. $1 million. Then $2 million. Walter refused again. The developers grew frustrated. To them, he was just a stubborn old rancher. To Walter, it wasn't about money. It was about respect. For years, nobody listened when he asked for help. Nobody cared when he lost the ranch his family built. Now suddenly everyone wanted something from him. The same people who ignored him were now begging for meetings. Walter wasn't interested. Construction delays began piling up. Investors became nervous. Each month cost Silver Ridge hundreds of thousands of dollars. The company's CEO finally traveled to Red Creek personally. He expected an easy negotiation. Instead, he found Walter sitting on a porch outside a modest rental home. The old rancher listened quietly as the executive explained the benefits of cooperation. Jobs. Economic growth. Tax revenue. Profit. When he finished, Walter asked a simple question. How much water will the community use every year? The executive gave an estimate. Walter nodded. Then asked another question. What happens during drought years? The executive hesitated. Walter already knew the answer. The development would drain local water supplies. Small farmers would suffer first. Families would face restrictions. The community would pay the price. While investors collected profits. Walter stood up. For the first time, his voice grew firm. My father protected that water because he knew someday someone would try to exploit it. The executive realized the meeting was over. Weeks turned into months. The project stalled. News outlets began covering the dispute. Public opinion shifted. Many residents sided with Walter. Local farmers especially understood the importance of preserving water access. Then something unexpected happened. A group of neighboring ranchers approached Walter with an idea. Instead of selling the rights, why not create a regional water conservation trust? The trust would protect local resources while providing fair access for future generations. Walter loved the idea. Together, they hired attorneys and environmental experts. Within months, the Red Creek Water Trust was formed. Walter transferred his rights into the organization. The agreement permanently restricted large-scale commercial exploitation. Any future usage would prioritize local agriculture and community needs. Silver Ridge was furious. Their entire business model depended on unrestricted water access. Without it, the luxury development no longer made financial sense. Investors pulled funding. Construction stopped. Eventually, the company abandoned the project entirely. Millions of dollars had been wasted. All because they failed to investigate one forgotten document. A year later, the former ranch looked very different. Instead of luxury homes, much of the land had been preserved as open grazing property. Local ranchers leased portions responsibly. The community benefited from protected water supplies. And Walter? He never became rich. But he did receive compensation from conservation partnerships and agricultural programs. Enough to live comfortably. Enough to stop worrying. Enough to spend his remaining years in peace. One afternoon, a reporter asked whether he regretted turning down millions of dollars. Walter smiled. Then looked toward the distant hills where his family's ranch once stood. My father taught me something a long time ago, he said. Sometimes the most valuable thing you own isn't something you can sell. The reporter asked what he meant. Walter glanced toward the creek flowing quietly across the valley. The land belonged to my family for 60 years. He paused. But the water belongs to the future. And for the first time since losing the ranch, Walter knew he had one. Ending message. Sometimes people believe ownership means having power. But real power comes from understanding the value of what others overlook. Because one forgotten document, one hidden right, and one determined rancher can change everything.